My Hero Academia. This is My Hero Academia, chapter 370, History. Last we left off, we were Deku seems to have had one for all for one on the ropes, and all for one seems to have done something, specifically in communication with Spinner. But as this chapter continues, we don't really see that really came of anything yet, unless this chapter takes place like a little bit after Dobby's initial defeat. So there's a whole lot of battle that we're turning the clock back on. So this is a while back. Being held, and it turned we saw of Spinner, he was actually on his way there with an army of heteromorphic quirked people to go free Kurogiri, and it's a lot of people. It's all the people that were involved in the Meta Liberation Front, I think, or the Paranormal Liberation Front, plus a bunch of ordinary citizens who sympathize with the cause. And it's a total force of 15,000 people, all mobbing this hospital. There's a bunch.
The Drool God himself.
Yeah, the Drool God himself, King Drool himself, Spinner. He's and there's a few heroes there. Some we recognize. We see President Mike, obviously, and we see Rocklock, who we've seen before in the Overhaul arc. And they're doing their best. They're fighting. We see that Anima is there. Coda, the student who can speak to animals, he's also there. But they're getting pretty overwhelmed because like the numbers are just so fucking big. Coda gets caught up from behind. One of the heteromorphs just like pulls off his mask and his like, I guess, speaking apparatus. And Coda tries to reach out to them. And one of them basically calls him a traitor to his kind. The fight continues onward. We see that like, I guess like the second in command to Spinner's core of fighters is basically
the puppet master.
Yeah, he's basically spouting off about all of the oppression that heteromorphs have suffered over the years. There's been a number of incidents related to mass discrimination and assault on heteromorphic people. On top of just individual assaults on people, and they make the distinction that like, yeah, I mean, all these heroes and these people in the police would have you believe that all these heteromorphs and people like with human faces are getting along great, but if you leave the city and you look beyond, you see that that it's still as shitty as it was before. People still look at you and they say, you give me the creeps. And they're people who have just slipped through the cracks, and that don't live in these highly populated melting pots, so to speak. And they needed a symbol for them, and Spinner is that symbol for them. And he's going to lead them into the prominence of society. And then we get into Spinner's mind, and his mind's a little fuzzled because whatever quirk All for One gave him is just like fucking with his mind for the most part. But you know what? He's
making him slow.
Yeah, he's still got a job to do. He says, whatever, me just take back Kurogiri. And as he's about to like come down on these two police officers, heteromorphic police officers, we see Shoji come in and do his octo blow, intercepting Spinner right there. And the heteromorph villains all just jump him after that. And they're just like, die, kill the wannabe hero. He's like, what's any of that got to do with attacking a hospital? He said, back in Jakku, the first thing the heroes did was to make sure that the patients were safe. But what are you guys doing? You guys are just mobbing people. And we get a little flashback panel of Shoji, seemingly with bandages around his mouth. We had a similar panel with Spinner in the very beginning, just to note it off, I think. Um, but yeah, they're just like continuing to mob. He manages to just shake a bunch of them off, and he's like, "Do you have a plan here? Because if you don't, I won't let this stand." And we finally see Shoji's face, like in full for the first time, and he's got this like kind of unhinged jaw. There seems to be a scar there. We don't get like a full view. I feel like next chapter, obviously, we'll get a better look, but after all this time, we finally get to see Shoji's face, and that's where the chapter ends. Uh, Josh, what did you think about My Hero Academia, chapter 370? I know you had a lot to say.
Okay. This was a heavy chapter, in my opinion. Okay. So, I thought about this chapter for a long time. I guess specifically how I was gonna talk about like my thoughts. So I just wanted to. I think I'm gonna start with what message I feel like is being taken away so far, right? Because obviously the arc isn't finished. This is just an early impression of how I feel, right? So this is a very like potent example of like when we say Horikoshi has an issue with with telling but not really showing, right? We hear about these incidents that happen. He says the 6-6 incident, the Great Jeddah Purge, and then just the general violence and attitude towards heteromorph quirk people, right? And man, like I think I think it makes the message a lot weaker without that support, you know, without clear examples, clear emotional ties in the story where something happened to a character that you know we were like, damn, this is like something valid. Now, I'm not here trying to say that in this story that oh like that statement isn't valid. It just doesn't feel that I'm not it just seems bullshit and really hollow as far as from the villain's perspective, you know? Because obviously they're bad guys. Where it's not about agreeing with them. We don't want to agree with villains, right? Because they don't care about harming people, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things to disagree with. But you know what I like in storytelling is when there's depth to the villains. You know, there's a reason people do things and I just feel like their reasoning here, right? Spinners, the great mass of people, the great mass of heteromorph quirk users, uh, their their plight rings hollow to me, you know. And I think you know perhaps that can be mended a little bit if we get a deep flashback with Shoji, right?
Yes.
That's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Shoji and maybe even a little bit of a glimpse into Spinner's past as well, you know, to see like two different perspectives and how they came to where they came. I think that'd be really nice. I just want to say, like, regardless of anything I'm saying, none of this is irredeemable. Again, this is just how I feel in the moment because this is sensitive stuff. This is, in my opinion, really important. This is a really important topic, a very relevant topic to you know to our lives now, and really for a large chunk of human civilization, honestly. So I digress. Look, regardless of it ringing hollow, I feel like I get the I get the point here, right? Like these people were made to feel othered, which is wrong, and that make like when I think of real life examples, I think back to maybe like think about Muslim people in America, like around 9/11, or really around the world, because the terrorist rhetoric was, in major media stations, not just in this country, in Europe, Australia, everywhere. You know what I'm saying? This it was similar rhetoric, and a lot of people would stereotype Muslim people and say mean things to them, call them terrorists, and pat them down, extra security points. People would be nervous around them, all because of what a small handful of people did, right? And those are the vibes I get from this story, or even like with what's another example of people like being, I don't know. That's just the closest example to me as far as like, people being made to feel othered. But I want to take this moment to just quickly explain that there is a difference between prejudice and stereotyping and like racism, right? Because I actually did a little bit of digging around this week because I wanted to see how people were feeling about this chapter. I actually went on Reddit for the first time in my entire life, just to really, because Twitter wasn't doing it for me. People weren't really talking about it, maybe because they didn't want to spoil. I guess I'm lucky, guys. I'm sorry. I can't find them even if I want to. I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell you guys. So let me be the mockingbird through the mine tunnel. If I'll come back if it's safe. you know. Anyway, yeah. So I went on Reddit just to kind of see how people were feeling about about the topic, and I seen the word racism being thrown around a lot. So I just wanted to, again, take this opportunity for anybody listening who may be confused about those two things, right? Because we get it, a lot of people get it construed, right? So prejudice is in everybody. It is a part of human nature. It's wrong, like wanting to, like feeling like having that feeling of wanting to commit violence to somebody. That's natural. That's part of our instincts, but it's wrong to do it just because, you know what I'm saying? You want to check that behavior. Similarly, you want to check your prejudices, especially if they're unfounded, if they're just based on hearsay and broad and ignorant generalizations. Anyway, what racism is prejudice coupled with power. Okay? When you have a group of people, like a race of people, who are in a higher position than others, right? They are in positions of power, like in government or under a capitalist system, in like most of the people that own businesses and the means to production, which therefore people need to go, where we can't go out and find a gold mine. I can't go out and say that this land is mine and all this lumber is mine. We had to go work, we had to go through them. Therefore, that racist prejudice has an impact on these people's lives systemically, okay? As far as how they can find work, how they're treated by police and other officials, that are, you know what I mean? Like that, their prejudice is allowed to oppress others. Okay, that is when racism occurs. That's why they say in America, black people cannot be racist towards white people. That's what that means. Because a black person being prejudiced towards a white person won't do anything but maybe hurt that guy's feelings, which is bad. And you should not do that. However, it is totally different from systemic oppression. All right. So, with all of that said, I want to say that I do not see any evidence of systemic oppression. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist in this series. This is me kind of reiterating the point I made, that this is a very, this is really where Horikoshi's habit of, again, showing I mean, like telling and not really showing really backfires because this art could be something really special, in my opinion. And again, it can still be redeemed. You know, I'm interested. I'm not willing to. That's the whole reason I even put some thoughts aside and did a little bit of research and stuff for the sake of this because I still have hope that Horikoshi in his writing ability and that a nice little message can be gained from this. But I do have some pessimism. All right, and I'll wrap my thoughts. So this is the last thing I want to say. There was a moment where not Shoji, Anima was getting stomped out by a horde of the heteromorph uh agitators or whatever you want to call them, right? And one of them say, "We ain't rioters." I want to be clear here, right? These people are attacking a fucking hospital and are on the side of a clearly lunatic villain. They are beyond rioters. They are fucking what do you call that? Militia or guns for hire? What's the mercenaries? You guys are mercenaries, all
Yeah.
right? These aren't people who are out in the streets protesting and incredibly frustrated and taking their anger out on inanimate object. This is a completely different discussion, and if anyone wants to have a talk about that in the comments, I'd love to and we could take it there. But I want to be clear that these are two completely different scenarios, and it's very easy for people to see something in this comic and then relate that to what they're hearing in the news or what they hear from others. You know what I'm saying? Or what's being displayed to them. This is very serious stuff. You
Hmm.
know, we're talking about people's rights. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are clearly lunatics, guys. Yeah, they're right. They ain't rioters. They're fucking psychopaths. Like
Yeah.
at this point, you know, like come on. But right. So you know, with Shoji, I want to have hope because he's saying, "What is your plan?" Because we done been through some shit already, right? That's what's already being implied. So what's up? Because this is just making us look worse again. I'm hoping that that's kind of the direction they lead in, and that's something I can at least understand for this story, you know. And anyway, I think I've said enough. That was everything I wanted to say, guys. Any rebuttals in
Brian,
particular?
what did you think about this chapter, Brian?
Um, I thought it was nice to see Shoji get his moment, which is pretty cool. You know, coming
Yeah,
in being kind of a voice of reason. It was nice to have him have his moment, especially since this is a moment that strikes for him as well. Um, but I do agree there is not a lot of build up to this kind of thing, you know, and I'm not sure why that was a thing, why that didn't come up so often, but it did it. But at least it's getting its flowers now, kind of. I hope they build up on it more and kind of Spinner ends up becoming more of a present in mind and more of a leader for these people because that was his whole goal as a character was to be a leader for the heteromos, right? Um and you could tell that he's kind of absent-minded and he's not that leader that he's supposed to be right now because of All for One's influence. Um So I hope we get to see more out of Spinner here, aside from just being, big dumb idiot, because that's never really been his character. And this is like a clear vision that this is what All for One does to you. He gives you power, but it's not to your benefit, it's to his, even though you're the one obtaining it, you know? Um So we'll see what ends up happening this next chapter. I also am approaching it with a little bit skepticism, just because this. Don't get me wrong, Horikoshi is pretty good when it comes to these big, deep, nuanced topics, like using uh Endeavor's story for an example. He's been pretty good with that. Um, so I think we should give it a shot.
Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, this was a heavy chapter, man. I had to think about it a lot. You guys said a lot of stuff that I would think that I thought of basically as well. Uh my optimism for this series is also kind of like waning in terms of how deep Horikoshi will go with this. Mostly because, we're running at the very least we're running towards the finish line with some kind of sense of urgency here. So we might not get the nuanced look at this that we had even intended. Um, so
Or deserve. Sorry.
yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to see on that. I would think that we're gonna get a little something because the thing about the League of Villains is that Horikoshi has a lot of passion for these characters. Like the story is as much about the core original group of the League of Villains as it is about Deku himself. Like a lot of these characters are allegories for things that Horikoshi wants to comment on in the world. We have neglect with Shigaraki, just general neglect and just non acceptance from society. We have mental illness with Toga. Uh, we have general, I guess, racism and prejudice with Spinner, stuff like that. There's these like flaws in society that is represented with each member of the league, and I feel like Horikoshi takes special care with those guys. We see it in Endeavor's story. I think when Horikoshi is in this mode where he's dealing with characters that he's wanted to deal with, like these big moments that he's wanted to really press on, he gets it. I think he hits the landing. If we take Endeavors, as a score one type of deal, he's got a good track record in that degree. So I have a little bit of hope that maybe we'll get like an extra chapter or two dealing with this whole thing and closing it up in a good way. Um,
Hmm.
but I we'll have to see. It is really up in the air, and it is depending on how much enthusiasm Horikoshi has left. Which, seeing as how this is a core League of Villain member, I'm hoping that it is more than the average battle that we'll see in this final arc. Uh, to your point about showing not telling, I fully agree. I think with the amount of
Telling, not showing.
uh,
Oh no, you're right. You're right.
yeah,
Because that's what we want. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I think the fact that there are a lot of heteromorphs in Class 1A alone, and how long has it been since we've been kind of low key lingering on the mystery behind Shoji's mask? We got a little mention of it back in the day with Nejire. Nejire, the first question that she asked Shoji is like, "What's up with the mask?" And as he is about to get into it, it teased at that moment that at least there is a definitive story behind why
Right.
Shoji wears the mask.
There's something being hidden, which means there's value to right?
Right, right.
It's build up.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that I mean, obviously we're always on conjecture with this thing and how much Horikoshi, how much the story of the story that Horikoshi was really in control of. There's obviously rumors about editorial mandate and reader and viewer dissatisfaction with the league in Japan and all that stuff. So I don't know. My Hero Academia is a very interesting case study. But in regards of like audience reception, because it's at the same time one of the most popular series in Jump by a lot, but also a very controversial one amongst people. Um, and I think that's had an effect on a lot of the things that Horikoshi has wanted to execute. So we'll have to see how that pans out in this particular case. But the showing not telling is a big deal. We get all these incidents that we've heard of these incidents, but we only heard of them fairly recently. Like I definitely remember the mention of the 6-6 incident and the Great Jeddah Purge, but we haven't really got into it. So we've only heard them in name. We don't even know what happened. You know, I think like we're just supposed to get the base understanding that there have been there have been systemic attacks on heteromorphic people that we know, kind of like Tulsa, these are these like points in history that we know of, but we don't talk about a lot. And that's what these incidents I feel are supposed to represent. Um, but it would be good to have something like that. I feel like, the little glimpses that we see into Shoji and Spinner's past here with these panels is one of these incidents each, or maybe they were both victims of one of these incidents together to some degree. Um, and I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more about that next week. I would hope so. I really like Shoji as a character, even though he hasn't done all that much in the story. Weirdly enough, when he does show up, it's always a marked impression when Shoji does something. Um, so I'm holding out hope that we're gonna get a little something out of it, and I'm excited about it. But yeah, there's definitely some missteps here. Um, you know, just because the amount of opportunity that Horikoshi has had to go into this in the series. I'm rereading the series from the beginning, and it is kind of interesting how much of the classmates that like we don't really talk about, you know? How much like world building hasn't really been um what's the word I'm looking for? Reinforced, I guess. You know,
Uh-huh.
we have these bare bones.
Supported. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We have these bare bones impressions of what this world was like back in the day, and we have these impressions of these events and these things that have happened, but we don't really know a whole lot about My Hero. And obviously, there's vigilantes that exists out there. Probably goes
I was
into it.
gonna bring that up.
Probably goes
Actually,
into it a
but
little more. We wouldn't. I mean, at least me and Josh wouldn't know. We haven't read it in its entirety. I have, but you can't do that. This isn't like Marvel. This isn't DC. Like like having us see it in like an elongated form, but not really like delving into it to a degree in the mainstream manga where most of your audience is not great. But you can comment below
villain.
if it does exist in vigilantes, comment below and let us know. But as it stands, I have no idea. I'm hoping. I think Shoji's entrance was cool. Just a couple good things, I guess, about the chapter. I really like that he came in, had a cool like rada 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 moment, and that he's like not just a support hero like his quirk would have us believe. He can throw it down. Um, I like to see Coda doing stuff. This is again a little bit of the things that we've asked for. A little bit of the supporting cast stepping up and carrying their weight in the series. Coda and Shoji specifically because they're more tertiary, especially Coda. We haven't seen a whole lot of him, but to see him like come out from being this meek kind of like background cowardly type character into like standing up and fighting when the going gets tough, it's great.
Mm.
You know, um, I'm excited to see where this goes, and I don't really have much else to say. I think interesting chapter, a little bit of a missteps here and there, but that's like more of a symptom of the pacing of the overall series than the
Yeah.
chapter itself. The message that is relayed here is, I think, is an interesting one. We always talk about not that there's like a massive difference, but discrimination in more rural parts of at least this country even.
At least this country, yeah, we can use
Yeah.
ours as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the parallel being drawn here. I think like My Hero Academia is I obviously kind of like ingrained in American culture. It's a superhero comic. He takes a lot of inspiration from Marvel. So I think we can make these allegories and these comparisons to how he sees society here. And yeah, I think he's mentioning there's obviously a higher rate and a deeper and more visceral history of discrimination, of prejudice,
Right.
of racism in more rural parts of the country. So I think that's a good point to bring up. It's not talked about as often as far as I've seen. I think it's like a little a nice detail, a nice little like uh yeah, a little color to the canvas here to add, as far as I know. I don't know.
Yeah. I gotta. I don't have. I want. I have not really a rebuttal, but just some thoughts in response to yours.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, I believe that. What was the last thing you were just saying? Actually, uh,
About the message of rural areas having
oh,
yeah.
all right, all right. So you could argue that even in Japan, that like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
let's say for an example, like a black person going out to Tokyo, right? It's probably gonna be pretty chill, right? It's probably cool. Yeah, yeah. I'm a nigga in Tokyo. What up? You know what I'm saying? Everything's probably cool. But you go out to like, I don't know, Nagasaki. Nah, I don't know the fucking towns. What was
Just like
the dude from
a smaller area.
Kanzai? Uh
What?
Kanzai? What's
Kansai?
the dude
I think that's a
from
region.
Hajime no Ippo, his rival?
Oh, damn.
The Kanzai Tiger or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, something like
Hansa.
that.
It's like a home. It's
Sendo.
like a backcountry town.
Yeah, 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 like,
It's like a
the south of
some
Japan,
backwoods.
basically.
Right, right, right,
It's
right.
always
It's
like
like
translated as kind of like southern, you know.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
country shit. You know what I'm saying? Like country bumpkin shit, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what, like super rural. So yeah, like probably in those areas, they're probably really ignorant towards outsiders.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of relevancy to even his home country.
Oh yeah,
You
definitely,
know.
definitely.
But I kind of wanted to just hone in on what I'm worried about, like what I hope it just doesn't boil down to, which is like with the students, right? With Anima, what's his actual name?
Coda.
Coda, with
Mm-hmm.
Coda and Shoji is I hope. Oh god, I hope like this. I will accept most other things as long as Horikoshi doesn't do this, which is like have like the kids say something along the lines of like, "Oh, we faced discrimination, but we stood tall and ended up becoming heroes. So there's no excuse for you guys acting the way you guys do." And that is that is not an argument. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. Um, if you need to spark fucking change, sometimes violence is necessary. Because best believe the people fucking oppressing you is gonna react with violence. But that's a whole nother conversation. But that would make me really upset at Horikoshi. And that would be irredeemable in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna settle down now. I have one last minor criticism, but the way you were talking about them dealing with like the issues with Shoji now with the mask and just the overall animorph shit now at this point in the series, it feels like last minute homework.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's even I don't know how y'all feel about this, right? But even the Todoroki situation, we've gotten a lot of chunks of it, but this whole thing at the end still feels like he's just like, all right, let me just wrap this up real quick.
Yeah.
You know, even with getting like the Mirio and the two kids, like their group attack, we were getting what should have been another arc with them,
Mm-hmm.
or them pulling up, hijacking other arcs, being cool, or in that one in those two chapters.
Yeah.
It's like he's satisfied he's not at the end, and it's like some of it is cool. You know what I mean? We're gonna see how he handles this one.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's coming off that way, and I can't judge this nigga in that regard. Cause I'm a last minute motherfucker too.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, we've all not done our homework until the last very minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, was that the only rebuttal left?
Yeah, that's everything.
Woo-wee. Big old section for Chainsaw Man, for not Chainsaw, for My Hero Academia today. Yeah, all right. Well, with that being said, interesting chapter, obviously. I would say that this is, I guess, a good chapter. It really got us talking
So
about
much contention in 15 pages.
yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff happened, and that's honestly a
What
mark.
series does that?
I don't know.
Highlight New Jump City. Listen, if you're on YouTube, please leave a like. Yo, comment. Say what up. Just say what up to me. Say yo. Say Just say nice things.
Yeah, say
Anything.
nice things.
You should sub if you listen. We promise.
So on your subscription feed, we don't send you emails and shit.
Yeah. No spam. But you know, if you have a YouTube feed, some people spam the feed. I fucking hate it. But we only do it one day.
You got to do it for the almighty algorithm.
Yeah.
The only reason we don't do it is that
share with your friends. Let them know that we talk that good shit.
Yes, please.
All right.